Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we're talking all things life, leadership, and business. And today I'd like to welcome Kyra Meyer Johanson. Hello, Kyra.
Hello, Bee. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. And I love the fact that you have been to Australia. I've been to California, but you've been to Australia. Quickly, where have you been again?
I've been to Brisbane, Sydney many times, and I need to come to Melbourne. I need to come to Perth. I'm like a huge Australia fan. I love the coffee. Every time I come back from a trip to Australia, I have a little bit of a depressed state just for a couple of days when I realize I'm not going to get the coffee again. So,
And I have to take you to the footy. I'm a massive Collingwood supporter, AFL, and no, don't know if you've heard about Australian Football League. So if you come to Melbourne, I'll take you to the footy. That would be lots of fun. Anywho,
done. Sign me up.
let's get chatting because I'm pretty excited to talk to you this morning. And what time is it in California right now?
It is 1:37 p.m.
Oh,
So
okay.
you got
So yeah, so it's a bit, yeah, it's only 7:30 here. But I would love you to give a bit of a backstory because you've got an interesting, like you've got so much tech background, but then, this coaching piece as well. And we had a quick little chat around this authenticity piece and leadership. So I'm really keen to have a good old chat about that. But tell us a little bit about your backstory and then let's get into some kind of, I guess, really quite topical topics, if you like, right now around the state of business and the state of leadership, because I'd love to get your take on it also.
Sure. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Germany in a really small little town. And my mom was American and my dad is German. So basically, growing up in Germany, like they really pride themselves on quality products and education. And so learning was always kind of part of my DNA. And then I immigrated to the US as a kid where I learned American culture and I was constantly learning. So basically learning, uber
Yeah.
nerd. That never kind of went away. I ended up going to Berkeley for school, again, just nerding out 24/7.
I
And
love learning.
so I'm just always poking around. I don't know if you've done the VIA.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So what my number one strength in that is curiosity. So I think I have like a childlike wonder for everything and anything, and I'm always just curious. So needless to say, always curious, always poking around, learning, and then because I went to school in the Bay Area, I kind of fell into tech. But tech was something that always kind of kept my curiosity because there was always something new to learn, like a new type of automation, or now, we're talking about AI and AI agents
Yeah.
and GenAI, and there's just always something to be researching, to be understanding, to be, more educated on. So that's kind of how I fell into tech and why, like, I like to call myself kind of like a technology leader by day. And then, as of a couple of 5 years ago, I also like to say I'm kind of a coach by night, but
I love it.
coaching is sort of this thing that came out of came out of a very heart-centered place. I think people are fascinating. They're like onions, right? You never know
Oh,
someone
I agree.
fully, right? And so it's like that same spark of like wanting to learn, wanting to understand that I find gives me a lot of energy through
Mm.
coaching. So I apply that to my business job, my business day to day, and I also coach clients and teams in leadership, digital transformation, all of those types of things. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a broad.
Wow, what a fascinating story in terms of, yeah, the tech and then the coaching. I mean, coaching is such a big part of leadership these days, don't you think? Like in terms of you're almost, sorry, that's my puppy going on in the background, but hey, this is why this podcast is the way it is. But yeah, no, it's such an interesting thing because we've always thought of leadership as kind of, well, we haven't always thought of leadership as, but it's been always been quite rigid in terms of the way the back in the day, and now it is like you are coaching a team, right? So tell me, I might have to tell my puppy to be quiet in a minute because he's
Yeah, take
quite
your time.
Molly Bob, stop. He's looking for something, so sorry.
He's getting excited about the topics as well.
Yeah, totally. But tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in tech at the moment that is, excuse me for 1 second. I am so sorry.
Yep, take your time.
Sorry about that. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in leadership right now in terms of what is hot and kind of, I guess, the challenges leaders are facing.
Yeah, I think that it's a really unique time to be a leader when you are basically creating human teams and also AI agent teams, right? Like we're kind of in this interesting point of, wow, we're going to have teams that are both digital and human. And so what does it mean to be a leader in that type of an environment?
Yep.
And I think we're all kind of figuring it out together, but that's the hottest thing that I'm seeing and that I'm even experiencing myself, right? Like people are like, well, do you want to lead a big team? And I'm like, I don't know, because is leadership even going to look like it does today in 5 years?
My
Is
gosh, that's
right?
such
Like,
an interesting thought. Is leadership going to look like it is in the next 5 years or so? Like it's a pretty wild thought to think about that, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way.
yeah, or like, and who are those little bots that we're training and developing, and who are they becoming? And like, are we creating good ones? Like, you know what I mean? There's like a lot there that I think we're gonna all discover
Hmm.
together. Yeah.
Do you think leaders are scared? Do you think leaders are scared around the whole machine learning AI? Like, what's your view on that? And especially the ones you're coaching at the moment?
Yeah, I think if anything, it's just that it's a big change. And with any change comes a natural emotion of having a bit of fear, a bit of maybe it's like anxiety, a little uncertainty, and also navigating it ethically. So I think that a lot of leaders are just kind of starting to figure out what's authentic to them. How do they authentically lead and lead in a way that feels right in this really new age that we're kind of all entering into? I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's something that we're all kind of discovering together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the leaders that I coach and the businesses I consult with, I'm noticing that there's a lot of almost have not really even discussing like using AI is almost like a bit of the chat GPT, but not discussing the fact that it could become part of the team, if you like, and it could become a leader within the team. I don't think especially in Australia, I'm not having those conversations just yet, but I
Yep.
do find it fascinating in terms of the all right, so let's take a pivot in terms of what's your view on authenticity? Because for me, I'm seeing that the more authentic we are as leaders, as individuals, is important more than ever. And that's kind of the big conversation I'm having with a lot of people at the moment. And I'd love your take on that, especially in the tech space as well, and given what you're doing.
Totally. I think that so my background, I've been a product marketer for a really long time at companies like Salesforce, and just I've coached countless speakers for big keynotes and things like that. And what I've always found is that when people really believe what they say, regardless of maybe how they're standing or exactly what is said, they're perceived in a positive light, right? So really, authenticity is a true power uh, position to like kind of step into. And that's honestly one of the things too that got me into coaching because I was like, wow, it really doesn't matter what the topic is. When the person believes what they're talking about and is being honest, they crush it every time. So I think authenticity is like the most important thing that you can do. I also think it's the most challenging thing. And I think that's why we have coaching practices, right? Because like how hard is it to give feedback to somebody that you work with every day that you care about? Or right,
Yeah.
but talking to somebody else about how you don't like how somebody's operating is not being authentic, right? Like it's only authentic when you're true to the other person and you're kind of being candid and kind versus
Mhm.
being like nice and fake. So I
Yeah.
think, especially in the US, I find that that's really common in a lot of my conversations with leaders. But um, just to your point about authenticity, there was just a study released about how authenticity is one of the most powerful, like emotion or like frequencies that we emit as human beings, more powerful even than love and like anger. So I think that that's kind of an interesting, like, just theory to consider as you're talking to
Yeah, I'd
leaders.
love to. I don't know if you're able to share that study, but I would love to see that study and share it with everybody because I think that, it's an overused word, like somewhat like transformation in a way, but I think listening to you, I think for so long, again, we've almost lost because of the world we've come from or the world we've lived in for so long, the traditional, even the way you were brought up and, coming from a German background, for example,
Oh,
and the amount
yeah,
of people I've been speaking to also, even on the pod, around, the expectations of you must do this to get to this, you must be this person to succeed. You almost lose your authenticity along the way. And so for me, it's kind of then, well, how do you reignite that? How do you get back to this kind of heart-centered, which I think you mentioned before, heart-centered
yeah,
approach to how you lead? You know, candid and kind. I like to use the term clear and kind, but
yeah,
to be able to be your authentic self, be vulnerable and feel that you're not being judged, I think is super important. And because the stakes are high and the pressure's on as leaders, you've got all the pressure of hitting your P&L and, managing a team, etc. It's like sometimes, and I used to do this, you go into a business or, when I was leading a company, and I would almost put a mask on in a way because I had to perform this particular day. I was
yeah,
definitely authentic, right? But there were certain days where I was just like, I'm going to have to put a mask on today and I'm going to have to be not my actual full, Saturday self, if you like. And I
right.
think that's where, we need to dial back up the authenticity, especially when it comes to the likes of AI as well. And making sure that teams feel that they can be their unique selves when it comes to work and how they work.
Totally. And it's like, can like the AI bot start doing the things that make you feel like you have to turn down your authenticity? Like, can that be outsourced by a bot so you can be more human?
Yes.
Because that's ultimately what the bot can't do is have the honest conversation, talk about the pup, in the background, like all that kind of stuff that's real that creates heart to heart connection. A bot can't do that, right? So, and as more and more work gets outsourced by technology like that, we, I think, as leaders are going to have to actually dial up and become more human, tap more into our heart wisdom, um, and do so much less of what I think used to be valuable in our societies.
Yeah, so are you seeing that from a tech background and technology perspective in businesses? Are you seeing a lot of change in roles, like in terms of what is now being automated versus, and what are the sort of roles that are potentially opening up? Like, because to remove that, even that authenticity study you talked around, that fear and anger piece, right? And fear, if you like, of I'm not going to have a role because there's a scarcity thing going on too, isn't there, in a way where people are holding on for dear life for their existing roles. That's where you lose your authenticity because you're like, I have to just be this person, even if I don't want to be this person, because I'm so fearful of losing my job, economically and all of that. Like, what are you noticing in terms of trends from roles that are being automated? And then what are you seeing as potential opportunities for the future as AI becomes more and more, ingrained in businesses?
Yeah, something I was just reading a study that was just saying that already like 80% of businesses are experimenting with AI at this point, right? So it's definitely coming and it's here to stay. And I would say this, is it going to completely eliminate roles? There might be some roles that it does eliminate, but I would say having actually implemented AI powered technologies in a lot of different ways at companies, it's still something that requires oversight. It still requires human
Mm.
intervention and review. The bots are only as good as the data that comes in. So as soon as the data gets messy or somebody messes something up, right, it's like, oh crap, we need a person to look at this and make sure it does what we want it to do. So I don't think it's going to be about, roles being eliminated. I do think it will be about becoming vulnerable and saying, what is it about my job that I kind of wish I could automate? And how can I start to be that leader and actually start to experiment with what the job might look like with some capabilities or some functions of the role being automated and then stepping into more, again, human work that a bot can't do that's in your role. For example, coaching, right? Like there are already bots that are coaching people out there, right? That I'm seeing. And as a human, right, that's considering, would I be coached by a bot? For example, there might be some examples where I would want to be coached by a bot. Like maybe I have a bot review all of my emails and
Say
maybe it tells me,
productivity. Yeah.
right? Or maybe it tells me, hey, you have a bias around this that I didn't realize I had, right? Like these bots can kind of look at how you write, look at what you do, and give you feedback that's pretty specific. However, if I'm trying to step into a new level of leadership or step into a new version of myself, I might not want to talk to a bot about that. I might want to talk to somebody like you, Bee, right? Like, and have a real like human discussion about it.
Conversation.
So I'm just trying to think about like, I think that example is one way to look at how AI will kind of impact every role out there, right?
Yeah.
Like there's some things that make sense to maybe outsource
Mm.
to a bot, but there's so much that won't be. So I wouldn't be too, or as much as you can, like tap into the excitement, honor the fear, but like see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, I
To
totally agree. I think that's kind of the world we're in now, right? Like not looking at it from we're in the midst of so much change, and yet we can look at it from a place of fear. Yes, you need to honor it, and what is it that you're resisting? That's one of the, things I work with my clients when it comes to change. But then also look at the possibilities, and then what can you create from those possibilities? Because everything you're talking about, that's kind of for me, that's how do you, it's innovation, right? And how do you be more like, experiment at this point in time in terms of from a productivity sense, how do you get those environments with your teams and as a leader so that you are getting the best out of everybody, where they feel and perform at their best. And if that means that, there's aspects of things you've done previously that you're automating to then give you the ability to be more, because I do want to talk to you about innovation, to allow you to be more creative and innovative in kind of the what you should be focusing on. I think that's the other big opportunity here as well. What's your view on that?
just sort of, do you mean like how we get to be more innovative in this new time?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it is fascinating to, I mean, look at all the different things that this technology can do. I mean, like literally, there are bots that can scrape this conversation that we're about to have and pop out a 2-second social clip about it. It's like it's so cool. I mean, now you don't have to spend time editing all that, and
I know.
listening through the whole call, right? So it's cool. So there are things that are exciting because it's going to get you out of that work that's keeping you bogged down, and then will hopefully allow you to do less of that admin stuff. Like even like let's say this was a call at work where we had to recap the takeaways, right? And a bot's going to do that for us. Great. I can now spend more time thinking about how I want to be creative in an upcoming meeting, and like maybe we all dress up and say what's on our heart today. I don't know. But like this stuff that we usually don't have time for because we're doing something, annoying and manual that now we don't have to do. So I think there are countless um exciting new things that we're going to be able to do at work that we didn't have time for before.
Yeah. I love
That's my two
that.
cents on it. What do you think, actually? Yeah,
I
like,
think that exactly that. I think again, it comes back to, you've talked about heart a lot and you've talked about, we've talked a lot about authenticity. I think that the more we can, I see AI as a really great productivity tool, but I also and it also allows us to then focus on and explore the more high value tasks, if you like in terms of, don't get me wrong, I use AI to collaborate with, etc. But
right,
it allows us to get more into our flow state, if you ask me, whereby we are able to have, when you're in that moment and you're just kind of like everything's coming out of you and you just kind of like, and I'm typing away as I'm saying this, but all the ideas come rushing through. I think that's the opportunity. I'm a big fan of working with clients on subtracting from the mind versus loading up. And I think AI has the ability to do that potentially, then to give us clarity and more clearer focus to then really truly work on, the be more curious, be more creative, be more innovative, and do what we love and do what we're meant to be doing. And I think that's if we can approach it like that and tap into it like that, and if leaders can in particular and teams, I think that the possibilities are endless in my mind. Like that's how I see it. Yes, you've got to watch out and you've got to be a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? You've got to, be aware, but you
Yep.
also, I think there's I think we've got a really great, we're at a point in time where there's a massive opportunity to really reshape and redefine how we work, how we live, um, for the better. I'm that sort of a person that I look at things that way. But you talked earlier around, and I'm keen to, I guess I'm curious to understand this is so by day you're working in tech and then by night you're working as a coach. When do you find time to fill your heart up and how do you stay truly authentic to yourself if you are working day and
Yep.
night? Like, I'm keen to understand that.
Yes. I don't work with a lot of clients. I'll say that. I'm very, very careful about only taking on like one or two projects at a time because I just don't think that, or I am not in a place in my coaching career where I could do back-to-back coaching and do a good job. To answer your question, how do I fill my cup? I make a lot of space for creative outlets. I'm literally learning how to face paint right now.
Love
Like
that.
so random. It just like came to me. Like one of my friends was like, "Oh, I'm a mural artist. I also have face paint gigs and like, do you want to learn?" And I was like, "Sure." And literally I bought all the stuff and now I'm talking to all my neighbors with friends and they're asking me if I can face paint their kids and it's like the most fun, joyous activity that I'm not trying to monetize. It's just fun and like bringing kids joy, literally the most fulfilling thing ever. For me personally. I also I've been taking like jewelry making classes like silversmithing. I'm always just dabbling in something random that's creative because I really thrive on creativity. And again, it's also the curiosity, right? Like so if you're like, where do I get started and how do I know who I am as an authentic person? The VIA studies or test is a really good one to start with because it's
Oh
like, well,
yeah, it is such
what
a
are
good
you
one.
about? Right? And what am I about? Creativity, like and curiosity. So if I'm learning a new type of art and getting to tinker on something, I'm probably in my like happiest place. So I always do that to stay energized and I like try to go outside every day. Like I try to
Love that.
move
So you've
every
got
day.
you've got a good mix because you've got that, whole novel experiences where you're trying different things and that kind of
Yep.
keeps your curiosity and creativity, which enables you to keep getting back into your flow state, right? I look at that, when you kind of, I don't know if you ever have those days where you're grinding and you're kind of stuck and then all of a sudden you go out and like, for example, and start face pointing, it just changes everything. So, and
100%. And it's like, and then when I go do that, I come back and I'm like 10 times better at everything else that I'm doing, right? Which is so counterintuitive. But do you find that like when you step away, that you come back and you're 10 times
100%.
more productive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's kind of how
100%. And I'm also been playing with that, when I am right in the zone, pulling
yep.
myself out of it. Because once upon a time, I used to just push, push, push and keep going. And I'm finding now when I go back in, like later, I'm more energized and I have even more ideas than I did previously because I just didn't know when to not push. And so, encouraging clients to do the same because, again, we're just trying to, there's never enough time in the day. But unless
Mhm.
we have those novel experiences, and I love the fact that you get outside every day from an active recovery. I'm a massive fan of, that whole active recovery piece, just to kind of reset yourself.
Yep. Yep. And just like resting, like, there's times when I'm like, I'm so overwhelmed. I just need to like lie down for 10 minutes and just like listen to a meditation or something. But, I just think your body is really wise. And again, our hearts and our bodies carry so much wisdom that when we actually listen to it, it's shocking what happens. It's
Mm.
like when I eat good and I like let myself take a break and then I come back and I'm like, wow, I just came up with an amazing idea for this project. And now it's going to take me 30 minutes versus 5 hours sitting at the computer wondering what I should put together, right? It's like your body knows what to do. And I think there's just a level of trust that we have to almost rebuild with ourselves, or at least I had
Yeah.
to. Like I kind of like let people tell me how I should be working and how I should be doing my life. And the more I let go of that, the more I stepped into my own power. And I think that's something that I talk to my clients a lot about too. And
I do
it's
too.
fun to witness,
Is
when they
is is the tech from the business perspective in your day to day, would you say that they are harnessing that way of being when it comes to work, or are they still stuck in the old ways of, the hustle, the work, 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 work sort of thing, and no allowance for what we're talking about right now?
Oh, it's such a good question. And I think it really depends on the company that you're at. I mean, I think I've had the privilege of being in tech for my whole career for the most part. And boy, do I feel like they've always been more open to creative new ways of finding energy to then go, crush it harder at work. I mean, like Google had the sleeping pods, right? Like there's always something interesting that they experiment with. So I would say because of the industry I'm in, there's often a lot of openness for a walking meeting or like whatever, insert blank on, whatever type of working situation we want to experiment with today. I do think though it depends on also the team and the person as well within the company, right? When I was in my 20s, I was grinding and I loved it and it was fine, right? And like then I hit a wall and then that didn't make sense for me anymore. And I had to kind of reinvent myself
Mm.
in my 30s for how I want to show up and what feels right and grinding like in sprints and kind of allowing myself to also have rest and whatever, right? So it just looks different, I think, for the individual and also maybe the team. And so right? Like figuring out where you're at and what you want and just like honoring your boundaries. Like if you get into a gig and you're like, I want to work from this time to this time and this is how I want to operate. And if that's not respected right out of the gate, like you're probably not in the right place and that's fine, right? And like you'll find the next place to be that'll be better and more aligned with what you want. But I think that question's tough because it really depends so much on the company, like how is the company performing, right? Like are you in a state of abundance where you can have more experiment, or are you like, oh, you're struggling as a business and it's really, really competitive and you don't have as much time to
Yeah, I
experiment.
also think it comes back to leadership, right? Doesn't it? In terms of it starts from the top, what the leader, is, I guess, how they're guiding the business sort of thing, right? I think that again, there's a huge opportunity there to reshape, redefine how we show up at work and how we're able to be authentically ourselves, and bringing that together as a team in terms of like how does the team collectively flow together. But
Right.
also for me, it's really about the fact that we are in a non-linear world. So, like businesses looking at it from a non-linear way, nothing ever goes from A to B. It's like, so it's the same with teams, it's the same with individuals. It's been a
Right.
fascinating chat. What do you see as the two biggest, I guess, opportunities that you're looking at for this year, for 2025, even though we're in April now?
Yeah. Opportunities for this year. I think personally, I'm going to continue doing a lot of creative pursuits because that gives me 10x more energy to go crush it as, a coach and tech professional. And then I would say professionally, I'm really excited to just become more of an expert in AI and then also an expert in what it means to be human in the AI era, right? Like how can we be the most epic human versions of ourselves and then partner with bots to like crush it even harder, right? So I think there's a lot there, and I hope to be speaking about this year. Maybe I'll write about it a bit, but those are the intentions I have for me. But what about you, B?
Oh, similar, like the human piece, exactly right. The human and the AI piece is kind of the really big focus for me. And truly, if I think for me, working with individuals and teams that really want to, and businesses that really want to reshape the way they live and work, and what that
Yeah.
means to, I guess, for me, shine their brightest is my big focus, because I think we're in such a, I was saying this to someone the other day, 1 in 3 people are, experiencing burnout these days, and there's a better way. There's a better way to operate. And you quickly mentioned before about abundance, and we're very much profit first, the rest later. There's
Yep.
still a lot of that mentality and mindset. But yeah, if we reshaped everything, profit follows. Like, profit follows with happy, high performing teams. But it doesn't follow when you've got underperforming, not happy and disengaged teams. You can keep pushing and pushing and pushing that profit piece. So that's my big mantra and focus for this year. And similar to you, I think it really is around, that curiosity, that beginner's mindset, and having that kind of space and time to explore and let's see what drops in terms of from an intuitive sense and the ideas
Yes,
and just taking some risks and going for it. Like now is the time to be going for it, if you ask me. So, Kira,
100%.
it's been wonderful to chat to you. I am pretty excited that the fact that you're pursuing what you're pursuing this year. If you started writing articles or started getting it out, like, the human angle and how AI plays a role, how could we find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me at KyraMeyerJohanson.com. So like my full name. No one had that one. Uh, So that's my website. You can also hit me up on LinkedIn. That's where I kind of have my biggest presence, just because I've got like a big professional network, and that just seems to be the place where I still communicate with folks. So just DM me if you want to talk about digitally transforming with AI, and maybe even taking a coaching approach or, a facilitated approach with a team, as you start to play with
Huh. And maybe
what
we
that
could
what looks like.
maybe we could do like a collective session on human transformation with AI. Like there's something I think
Yeah,
there's something cool in that, bring some of the Aussies along, bring some of the US along. I mean, that would be just a fascinating group chat, wouldn't it? So
100%. And I'm always interested in what Australia is doing because I feel like I mean you're in the future, right? Like you're in tomorrow already. And I'm like always curious. I feel like Australians tend to just get it done and like figure it out because the rest of the world is like behind, you know? So I'm
I
always
don't know.
curious what you
Yeah.
all are doing
Yeah,
because I'm
yeah,
sure it's great.
I think we're kind of split at the moment. There's a lot in the future, but there's still a lot, you got to take people on the journey, don't you? So, it's kind of that whole, yeah, take people on the journey and just keep
Yeah,
exploring. But love what
we're
you're
all learning
doing
together.
and super awesome to chat. So, I'll share everything on socials and yeah, thank you, Kira.
Thank you, B.